Hey guys, and welcome back to the Wrestling Hideout Podcast. Now, we have a new topic for today. This is going to be part one of two parts, talking about Kurt Angle, a wrestler who I personally was never a fan of growing up until I matured, and then I realized he's probably one of the greatest people to ever step foot in a wrestling ring. I'm, of course, your host, Rhys. I'm here with my other co-host, Liam.
Good afternoon, world.
And shall we jump right into it, starting with Kurt Angle? And part one, we're going to talk about a little history of him because there are going to be some people who sadly will not have seen Kurt Angle wrestle, which hurts my soul. So, should we give a brief overview
Definitely.
of him, and then we'll jump into his WWE career, and then part two, we'll talk about what I think was the better part of Kurt Angle's career, and that was the TNA run.
Yeah, well, to kick things off, Kurt Stephen Angle is a Pittsburgh native, as everybody knows. I think he goes on about it in his career enough. Like all Americans, he's part German, Irish, English, Italian, and Lithuanian.
Ah,
He's got four brothers, one of whom is called Eric, which we'll talk about later because he actually appears in WWE a few times. Sadly, he had a sister who died very young in 2003. He is a University of Pittsburgh graduate, and his father actually passed away when he was quite young. He died in a construction accident. Angle dedicated both his career and his autobiography to his father, and he regarded his wrestling coach David Schultz. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, Reese. Any real wrestling fans will know who David Schultz is,
yep.
as his paternal father figure growing up. So, have you got anything to add there about his growing up?
No, just that when you refer to Eric Angle, we will obviously be mentioning his WWE stuff, which happened pretty early on. But we do also have to sadly note that Eric is currently in prison, as well as has kidney cancer, because he was arrested for drug trafficking and for assault. So, a very different kind of angle to the one we'll be talking about.
Yeah,
But
I mean, there unfortunately seems to be problems in the Kurt Angle family when it comes to substance abuse and cancer. But I think with cancer, it's not an uncommon thing, unfortunately. But on to Kurt Angle's actual wrestling career. So, believe it or not, Kurt Angle actually started wrestling at 7, Reese.
7,
7 years old.
that's crazy.
Okay.
Do you know what I
Um,
was doing at 7?
he What was that?
I was picking my bum and smelling it to see how bad it would smell. That's what I was doing at 7 years old.
I ran away from home at 7, and my father found me in Newcastle city centre.
Dude, we all three of us have very different upbringings.
So he attended Mount Lebanon High School. He's actually got a varsity letters in football as an all-star linebacker. I think that's something about the US, isn't it? When it comes to when they say football, they don't mean what we call football. Everyone, they mean American football. I pretty much think that 90% of wrestlers have tried American football in their time, and anyone that was big and butch at high school, did you know that in the States you can get a degree if you're good at football?
Yeah, it's crazy. You get those
Literally.
scholarships in.
So he was also undefeated as a freshman at wrestling. He qualified for the state wrestling tournament in his sophomore year. He came third as a junior and was the 1987 Pennsylvania State Wrestling Champion as a senior. To put that into context, I was born in 1987. Reese was a twinkle in his mum's eye.
I was 2.
Without me sounding like I'm just reading his Wikipedia page, everybody, he was a runner-up in the NCAA in 1991, and then he was a three-time NC Division One All-American, and he actually won the NCAA twice. To cut a long story short, Kurt Angle's won everything from football, checkers, chess. He's one of those guys that was born to be an athlete. He was the first Olympic gold medalist in wrestling history. I don't think he told you that once in his entire career. He
No.
also won the Atlanta World Championships. And in the 1996 Summer Olympics, he won the Olympic gold medal. I think he had a problem with his neck that he's never mentioned.
Never
But
once.
did you know? Have you actually watched his Olympic matches? Because they are available on YouTube. Have
No,
you watched them?
I've never watched them. I can't really get into like amateur style wrestling. It's I don't know. It just looks like a couple of grown men hugging. It's the one part of, like UFC and MMA that I find really boring as well. Just, I'm sure there's so much skill and thought that goes into it. It's just not for me, you know.
To go into context, listeners, about Kurt Angle, my co-host Rhys has a problem with his knee that he goes on about a lot.
Hmm.
And he's in a lot of pain because his knee joint pops out constantly. Kurt Angle won the Olympics with fracturing two of his cervical vertebrae, herniating two discs, and pulling four muscles
Yep.
in the trials,
Which is
which
insane
were
to me.
mere weeks before the actual Olympics.
So what's really funny about this is when he refers himself as a Olympic gold medalist and as winning the Olympics for a broken freaking neck, as he used to say. It's actually real.
Yeah.
It's not the WWE like bullshit. It's genuine. He did these things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you knew about his Olympics. He was taking actual pain reducing injections into his neck, medical grade pain reduction injections, what they give soldiers on the battlefield.
I had heard something along the lines of this, yes, which sounds painful in itself, to be honest.
He actually became addicted to Vicodin because of it.
Oh,
That's his first ever addiction. He actually defeated one of the greatest Olympians of all time in the final. His name is Abbas Jahadi, I believe. He's an Iranian, and he was a world champion and an Asian champion and an Asian Games champion. If you watch it, if you watch it, it don't look like Angle should have won that match.
oh, really?
His win was actually protested by the Iranian government. It's very he deserved to be an Olympic champion, but they wrestled each other to an actual standstill. Angle did something. He did a takedown in literally the last seconds, which got a point. Literally the last 2 seconds.
The more
But
you
you
know.
know that's by the by. The decision stood, and also early in his career, Angle used to wear medals to his ring and refer to them as his Olympic medals. They weren't. And partway through his WWE career around 2004, I believe he actually started wearing his real Olympic medal. I don't know if you noticed the difference.
I can't say I did, although actually, didn't the colours change? Because at one point it was the green band, right?
Right, so he used to come to the ring originally with a red, white, and blue band and two smaller medals.
Yes, 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 yes.
And then he started to come to the ring with his actual Olympic gold medal, which was a green
Yeah.
band with Atlanta written on it, and it's chunky as hell. An Olympic gold medal is not just like a tiny thing; it's heavy as hell. I mean, I've never held one, but I've seen them. The medals that he initially wore were his NCAA medals.
Oh,
Would you would you really want to wear your Olympic gold medal to the ring all the time?
I'd be worried someone was going to take it. I'd be terrified. I
I
wouldn't
mean,
leave that
Eugene
safe
did,
at home.
didn't he? Didn't he lose it to Eugene? I know I'm skipping forward a few years,
Oh,
but
something like that. And then there's also the case where Benoit had it and kept putting it down his trunks and all sorts. It was a recurring theme that Kurt Angle would lose his gold medal somehow.
in 1996, he actually turned down a 10-year wrestling contract to WWE because of his unwillingness to accept losses, and
Yes.
he held wrestling in low regard.
Yep.
That 10-year contract was worth 4 times more than what he actually signed for 3 years later.
Which is insane to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it. I mean,
Absolutely insane.
coming from actual wrestling in the Olympics, I can imagine the ego there was, well, I'd never lose. But it is a very different sport. You know, they're not doing
Well,
German suplexes and Hurricane Ranas.
he's actually said publicly being a professional wrestler is harder on your body than being an amateur wrestler.
I can believe that, honestly.
Well, because amateur Greco-Roman wrestling is a lot of body holds and you're on the floor a lot. I mean, I'll go there. Amateur wrestling and Pornhub, you know, the same moves are used in most of it.
This is true.
No, no offense to wrestling. Do you know what it was that changed his mind?
Um, is it going to be? Well, I know a few things. Number one, there was the ECW incident, which put him off of wrestling
I'm
entirely.
coming on to that.
But wasn't it the fact that he, like, all his money offers dried up really quickly after the Olympics ended?
Well, kind of. I think that's the real reason. He credits the fact that he started watching Monday Night Raw in 1998 and developed a admiration for Steve Austin. And it wasn't the wrestling that he developed an admiration for, it was the entertainment of Stone Cold.
Right, okay.
As me and you were bang on about, I don't think young people now realise how good Austin was as an entertainer and how he could have 40,000 fans chanting "what" with him. Such a stupid thing, isn't it? And he would have he'd have the audience in the palm of his hand. I still don't think they get wrestling reactions now like they used to in that era.
No, I don't think anything will ever come close to what it was like in the Attitude Era.
So there is that story as well where he was going to sign for ECW because of the money worries. He did turn up to one taping and walked out in disgust because I believe they had tied somebody up to a cross or something, a barbed wire cross, and hung them over a ring.
Well,
Angle's actually quite a godly person.
yes, so I probably know a bit more about this. So,
Okay.
the story is Shane Douglas knew a mutual friend of Kurt Angle and told Kurt Angle's friend that ECW was more like amateur wrestling than the WWE, which enticed Kurt to go and appear at a show. Now, before the main event happened, Kurt actually appears in the ring for the ECW crowd with his green gold medal, you know, waving to the fans and whatnot, has a bit of an interview with Jerry Styles, that sort of stuff. All good. The issue is, in the main event, it's Raven versus the Sandman, and it is such an infamous angle now. Raven crucifies the Sandman on a cross and puts a crown of barbed wire on his head. Yeah. So not only did it upset a lot of religious people, obviously Kurt Angle being in there didn't really help, and essentially Angle told Paul Heyman that if his appearance was shown on ECW TV at all, he would sue like the life out of him. It was so bad to the point that Paul Heyman got Raven to go out to the audience, not in character, and apologise for everything that happened in that match.
Sounds like something that you could only get away with in Pittsburgh. Imagine trying to do that in the South.
Yeah. But then if you flash forward a couple of years later, it's not I mean, the theory is the same, but it's also not the same. You had Stone Cold being crucified on The Undertaker's symbol. So...
It was me, Austin. It was me all along. That one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's going to be a storyline we have to go over at some point. Because there is so much in there. Did you know who the original person under the mask was meant to be before it was Vince?
Do you know what I did know, and I was going to ask you about this? Who was it?
Christopher Daniels.
Fallen Angel, yes. I did hear about that. Has he been around that long?
Yeah. Yes, he has. To put it into context for you, Christopher Daniels is 53.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't look it, does he? He looks almost in the same shape he did when I was watching him in 2008-ish.
He was in his mid-30s during that amazing triple threat match with AJ Styles and Samoa Joe.
Well, I mean that's good. That's good. I knew a little bit about the story of ECW. I didn't realize it was that bad. But flash forward. So when he went back to WWE in 1998, they didn't just sign him; they made him do a tryout. Like in 1996, they were going to sign him. I think Vince McMahon was going to do a Lex Luger on him, like a touring, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, touring and all that. And I'm not sure if he'd have been taken as seriously as he actually turned out to be. I think really, by turning that offer down, he probably saved his wrestling career and his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pay cut was
Because
crazy, but I would agree with you. I think he probably was better.
so when he went back in 1998, he was trained by the great Dory Funk Jr. at Funking Dojo in
Yep.
Stanford. And his first ever match was a losing effort against Tom Pritchard. Now, this name we've mentioned before.
Yep. Tom Pritchard also had a hand in training Angle, and Tom Pritchard is basically like the measuring stick during this time of who is a good trainee and who isn't, because he had a hand
He's
in all of them.
very under. He's very underappreciated. I think his brother gets a lot more press than Tom Pritchard does. But if you actually ask wrestlers from this generation, like people like people like Taker, people like Austin, people like Rock, I've all heard them talk about Tom Pritchard.
Well, Conrad Thompson and Bruce Pritchard have a very famous saying on their show that apparently it's very common for people to say that they would take a bullet for Tom and put one in Bruce. So I
And
think that tells you everything.
Bruce Pritchard is a subject we'll cover another day because that's a whole different subject.
Yep.
Um, so I think we can skip a lot forward because we'll be talking about him forever.
Yep.
If I keep going thing, I actually watched his debut match live in the UK. His debut match on television. And can you remember who it's against? Because I've always remembered this, even before I knew who Kurt Angle really was.
I can't. Do you know what my earliest memory of Kurt Angle is? It's a few months
What's
after
that?
he debuted, where he lost to Taz, who was debuting at the Rumble. That's the earliest Kurt Angle match I can remember.
So WWF at the time used to have someone called Tiger Ali Singh. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes, I do. He used to do the was it the cam shot where he'd pay people to do like really disgusting things in the audience?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes,
And so
yes.
what happened is he tried to pay Kurt Angle to blow his nose on the flag and to
Okay.
wipe the flag on between his arse.
Right, of course.
Um, he was like a little bit. So Tiger Ali Singh, to anyone who doesn't know, I would call him a mixture of Jinder Mahal and what Muhammad Hassan should have been. Not what he turned out to be, but that
Yeah.
wasn't his fault. He was got a mixture of that.
Yes, 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 yes.
So he came down to the ring to all the cheers. He beat up Tiger Ali Singh. Um, and then his first match on actual TV, in terms of Raw, was a win over Brian Christopher, if you know who I mean.
Oh yes, good old Grandmaster Sexay.
Yes, who has passed, I believe. Am I right?
He has indeed. Yeah, he passed 4 or so years ago
A
now, I
couple of
think.
years back. He also, in his early days, he did a series of matches in house shows against Owen Hart, which probably did a lot to actually get him ready for WWE style of wrestling.
Yep.
He actually faced Owen Hart just 2 weeks before Hart died. At the time, he was wrestling regularly for Power Pro Wrestling. Now, have you ever heard of them?
Weren't they sort of like one of WWE's like developmental places that they didn't actually
Yeah,
own? They were.
they were the Memphis Developmental.
Yeah.
They were pre Ohio Valley, pre
Okay.
Florida. So he actually won the PPW Championship and lost it to Steve Bradley, who I've never heard of, but I bet if I click his name, no, never heard of him.
Sick.
Okay, so he made his in-ring live debut on November the 14th at Survivor Series, defeating he's not late, the great Sean Stasiak.
Oh, good old meat. What a horrible gimmick that was.
The funny thing is about him, am I right in thinking that is he related to the other Stasiak, or is he not?
I don't know. The only thing I know about him now is that he's like a big time. Um, he's like a chiropractor
Yes,
or
that's
something.
right. Sorry, Sean Stasiak. So he's actually related to Stan Stasiak, who was an amazing wrestler. So I know we're going off subject a little bit here. So Sean Stasiak's dad was Stan Stasiak, who wrestled from 1958 to 1984,
Yep.
and he, I believe, was WWF champion.
Yes,
Yes,
Stan Stasiak
he
was. Yep.
was WWF champion, one of the first.
I think the biggest problem with Sean Stasiak is that he went to WCW and that
Took the
was
piss
pretty
out of
much
him.
that was pretty much the death of him. Especially after the WWE bought WCW, that was the absolute death.
The invasion angle, he was literally a joke. I
Yep.
remember that. It was every time you saw him, he was getting laid out by somebody.
Yep.
Invasion is, I think we've covered Invasion, haven't we?
We haven't. We should though. We definitely should.
We should. Because it should have been and could have been done so much better. Uh, in fact, one of the bigger podcasters did a show recently about what Invasion should and could have been if all the wrestlers had been contracted right.
Hmm.
What Survivor Series would have been the WWF versus WCW match. How good that could have been with the right wrestlers.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Right,
was very watered down. They should have held off, to be honest. But
I've got a question for you.
okay.
Who was Kurt Angle's first televised loss to?
Taz
Yes.
at the Royal Rumble. Yeah.
Taz in 2000 Royal Rumble.
Yep.
And
That's the match I
I
remember.
will never forget how impressed I was with Taz at first
Hmm.
and how good Taz was and what they did to Taz.
And then they absolutely butchered it.
Okay, so we're getting to the meat of it here, not reflecting Sean Stasiak. So, in 2000, Kurt Angle won European, the Intercontinental Championship in February, losing both to a triple threat match to Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho at WrestleMania
And may I just jump in?
2000.
Despite it being Benoit, if you have not seen this match, go and watch it. It is phenomenal. Probably one of the best triple threat matches that has ever existed.
I'm, we tend to skirt around the subject. I'm fully well aware of Benoit and what happened, but I can watch. I'm able to watch and appreciate his work in the ring.
Yeah.
You can't deny the guy could wrestle.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you have to celebrate.
So through mid 2000, much his work was an alliance with Edge and Christian versus Too Cool and Rikishi. Now that Too Cool and Rikishi, that was fun. Do you remember them dancing in the ring?
I do. I especially remember Kurt, Edge, and Christian because some of their skits with Commissioner Foley is so good. Like, this was a great time to be a WWF fan.
He later feuded with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. This isn't the feud, I believe, where he kissed Stephanie.
No, this is it.
I think that happened later.
No, this led into all of it. Yeah, because this was a long one.
Oh, is this? I thought that was a little later.
No,
okay.
this all led into one because it started with the triple threat of it being like Kurt, Triple H, and The Rock. It was for the main title, and then it just morphed into Triple H and Kurt because they had one of my
they copied that storyline 3 years later to the actual. They actually copied that whole thing with the kiss 3 years later with Booker T and his wife. It is pretty much a carbon copy.
Yes.
Because he kissed Booker T's wife in the same way.
Just worse, because doesn't Angle talk about being like bestiality or something during it? Some weird statement.
Yeah, and he goes on about being into black women and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Early 2000s, late 1990 WWF stuff. You said that on network TV now. That's it.
Yeah, wouldn't fly. Would not
That's
fly.
it. So he won his first ever world title, defeating The Rock at No Mercy.
Yes.
And he actually held it for quite a while as well.
Held it until
And if you
January,
ever get a
right?
chance, yes.
Yep.
If you ever get a chance, watch it. Watch the Angle Rock match because it's really good. Their styles actually mix quite well.
So,
So
two of my favorite matches
Kurt Angle
during
had
this time
Stephanie
period.
McMahon in the ring. Sorry?
Two of my favorite matches of Kurt Angle's happened during this time period. It's the finale to his feud with Triple H, which is Unforgiven 2000. That match, a lot of people won't say it's like one of Angle's best matches, but it's such a good match. Go and check that out. And also the insane six-man Hell in a Cell match at Armageddon.
That's the one where Rikishi goes off the top into the hay, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's full of blood.
Yeah,
and
that is my favourite Hell in a Cell match ever.
Yeah, it's for anyone that hasn't seen it.
Because everybody goes on about Mick Foley going off the cell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great, but because he went off the top of the cell, the rest of the match is really bad.
Yeah.
Because he was dead pretty much.
Yeah.
But this Hell in a Cell match is absolutely what Hell in a Cell should be.
Yeah.
Just to give you an example of how good WWF was at this era. Match card for No Mercy.
Yep.
Okay. 2000. Okay. The Dudley Boys defeating Right to Censor.
Oh.
APA defeating Lita and Teston Albert with Trish Stratus. Chris Jericho defeating X-Pac. Now, Chris Jericho X-Pac feud is actually worth watching.
I actually don't remember.
Right to Censor fighting again, defeating Chyna and Billy Gunn.
Okay.
Stone Cold and Rikishi, no holds barred match, ended in a no contest.
Wasn't this the
Pretty
end
and Regal
of
defeating?
Wasn't that the end of Austin's?
I believe
being
that's
run
the
over.
end. That's the end of the run over.
Yeah.
Feud. Yeah. William Regal defeating not Midian but Naked Midian. Right, I'm going to see if you get this right. La Conquistadors.
Yeah, whatever they are.
Defeating the Hardy Boys.
Yep.
Triple H defeating Chris Benoit in a 20-minute match, worth watching, and then Kurt Angle defeating The Rock. That sounds like a good pay-per-view card.
Really stacked.
The matches are under 21 minutes long, and that's what I liked about the Attitude Era. So every match apart from the final two is 10 minutes and under. You don't get that these days, do you?
No. I mean, there's a time and place, right? I think the problem is we have so much WWE TV now that you get so many 10-minute matches. It's quite nice to have 15, 20-minute matches for pay-per-views. But during this time, like, a 10-minute match was pretty common, and they would just go all out for 10 minutes, and then you'd get 5 minutes of promos, and then another 10-minute match, and then some other skit, and then another 10-minute match.
The thing is, remember, Raw was an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's your view on this? Do you think Raw was better with it an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours?
2.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. A 2-hour Raw is enough. I think 3 hours stretches it, and you get a lot of filler.
Yeah, 3 hours is brutal. Absolutely brutal. Because a 2-hour Raw is like an hour and a half.
Moving on quickly.
Show.
So, I'm going to give you a list of people that Angle defended his title against, and bearing in mind, this is still his debut year.
Yep.
Main TV. Defeated The Undertaker at Survivor Series. Won a 6-man Hell in a Cell match at Armageddon. He defeated Triple H at the Royal Rumble. He eventually lost the title to The Rock at No Way Out.
Yep.
Yeah, so the guy is beating The Undertaker, Hell in a Cell, and Triple H in his debut year. I don't think anyone else has had a debut year like that since. What's your view?
No, I don't think so because Cena didn't. Um,
No,
AJ
because
didn't.
Cena was actually almost fired very early on, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think the next closest one that comes to mind is AJ, but that wasn't really a year of it. I'd say his
That's the
second.
difference. AJ was an
Yeah.
established wrestler already. Really,
Um,
no,
maybe, I mean, the Shield, maybe, but nothing's like Angles. Like, nothing.
not quite like that. I mean, Impact probably
Yeah.
was as big, probably bigger, but again, they were established. They were established wrestlers in like NXT and other places. Kurt
Yeah.
Angle had literally come from absolute nowhere on the amateur scene, and within a year of signing, he'd won. He was Grand Slam champion basically within a year.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Angle's debut is crazy.
So he then feuded with Chris Benoit, who defeated at WrestleMania X7, lost to him in Backlash, an ultimate submission match. Now, please, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you ever want to watch a match about wrestling and the pure form of wrestling, watch the ultimate submission match of Backlash. I have never seen two people wrestle so well in a match. People go on about how great Bryan Danielson is, but this is pure class. I've never seen anything like it in terms of what it is. So it was a 31-minute match. Chris Benoit defeated him 4-3 in sudden death overtime. Have you watched this match?
I want to say yes, but not for a long, long time.
So this is how it went. First point, Benoit was forced to submit at 7 minutes. Then Benoit made Angle submit at 8. Then Angle made Benoit at 10. Then again at 11. But then at 18 and 27 and 31, Benoit made Angle submit. So basically, it's just chaos. You
Right.
know, you don't. They don't do matches like this now, do they? They don't do these sort of innovative ultimate submission style things, do they?
No, not for. I can't remember the last time we had a pure submission match. You see it more in AEW because they've got more technical people. Um, in WWE, I can't remember the
I
last
don't
time we had a
think
submission match.
WWE has that. I don't think WWE. Hang on, let me think. Do WWE have a submission specialist at the moment? Apart from Natalia, who never makes anyone submit.
I don't think so. I legitimately think WWE's last submission match had John Cena in. Because is that not where he got the STF from?
Shut the fuck up. That's what it was supposed to be called.
Yeah, I think that's where they got it from.
Is that where he did it with Umaga?
No, that was a I quit match, wasn't it? Or a last man stand. It was like he
Where he
throws,
used the ring ropes to
yeah, because
choke him out?
he throws the massive steps at him from the ring to the outside, if you remember,
Yeah.
and he like bounced off of him.
Another member of that family who unfortunately died very young. I reckon Umaga. God, could you imagine Umaga these days with the bloodline? So, that'd be brilliant. Isn't that Solo's dad?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
I thought they that's where he gets the because Umaga was the one who used to do the thumb, wasn't it, originally?
I think so. Yeah, yeah, vaguely.
Yeah, in this pay-per-view we're looking at, you've got Lita, Molly Holly, X Factor versus the Dudley Boys, Rhino versus Raven, William Regal versus Chris Jericho in a Duchess of Queensberry matches.
I remember. Oh no, it's so bad. They've got the fake queen sitting at ringside,
Yeah. Shane McMahon defeating the Big Show in a Last Man Standing match.
which is an amazing
Matt
match.
Hardy defeated Matt Hardy versus Christian versus and the two-man power trip. Now that is something I remember.
Yes.
Actually, this might be the pay-per-view where Triple H does his leg.
No, I was saying that the Triple H hurt himself was a SmackDown episode. It wasn't a pay-per-view because it was
Okay, it must have been just after this.
it was it was very
Because
close
I
to this.
remember they were still in the two-man power trip.
Yeah.
So off subject slightly, one of my favorite eras of WWE because they had Jim Ross and Paul Heyman on commentary.
Hmm.
Everyone goes on about Jim Ross and the King. Don't really rate the King. I really think that those two together they played off each other so well.
I agree. I think that's probably one of the better commentary teams WWE has ever had.
I don't think in 2012. Can you imagine the King doing commentary now?
I think they'd get phone off TV very, very quickly.
It's actually not that good, the King's commentary. No offense to the guy, because he was a great wrestler in his day. Go back and listen to it now. It isn't that good.
Yeah, it's very Attitude Era. Very, very Attitude Era.
Right, so where were we? Right, his debut year. Right, so during this time, so we're moving into 2001. This is when the invasion angle, and we'll just skip across this quite a little bit, but you're obviously aware that, in my opinion, Kurt Angle had his two best ever matches during the invasion against Austin. I've asked you to watch them in the past.
Yep.
Kurt Angle and Austin's matches are some of the most intense things I've ever seen, especially his SummerSlam and Unforgiven one where he wins the championship.
The Unforgiven
This
one
is
was
the era
amazing.
where... Sorry?
The Unforgiven one is amazing, and the end where all his family's in the ring and they lift him up is so good.
Absolutely amazing. There was something as well, I think we've gone through this off podcast. WWF's promo packaging at this time was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely amazing. I remember they had Let the Bodies Hit the Floor as their SummerSlam theme,
Yep.
which really tied into Austin's insane angle.
Yep. No, I agree.
I remember he defeated Austin at SummerSlam because Austin got himself disqualified.
Yep.
And then he won at Unforgiven, but then he lost the title really quickly afterwards to him. And then he turned heel and joined the Alliance, if you remember.
Oh yes, the cowboy hats and the guitars. I remember. Now there is two things I would like to circle back to, if you do not mind.
Of course, sorry, yeah, I'm
Number
skipping
one.
forward time.
No, number one. I agree with you about the live video packages. I think the only one that's done it as good as WWE during this period is TNA during their prime. For some of their video packages, the voice is just so good.
You know why?
Same person, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes total sense. Like, it's the only reason. There's the two that stand out to me, and I don't know why no one else has like gone back to this like person and team because they're so good. The other thing, I think we skipped over one of Kurt Angle's greatest ever matches.
Okay.
King of the Ring 2001, Shane McMahon in the hardcore match.
Oh, yes. Where he does it against the wrong pane of glass and Shane goes, do it again.
Yeah, so Bruce Pritchard tells a story that it wasn't what everyone thought and it was the wrong glass. Apparently the glass was correct. The issue was the pyro guys painted it with a protective coating because every time they would do pyro, the like fake glass would melt. So the pyro guys put this protective sealant over it, which meant that it wouldn't melt or crack. So when they came to do the moves, none of the glass would break because they'd all had this protective film on top.
Okay. Am I right in thinking that Kurt Angle broke his tailbone and
Yep.
Shane McMahon nearly died?
Yes, it is one of the most brutal matches you will ever see, and it is
I did
so
hear
well.
somewhere, actually, from somebody in the know, it's one of the only times that Vince McMahon lost his shit about the safety of one of his family. Apparently, he was going insane at the back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised because Shane gets dropped in his head twice, thrown through the like plasticky protective like, glass thing. Kurt Angle breaks his tailbone and still has to drag him to the ring. Like the match is so brutal that at one point Kurt Angle legitimately has to put Shane McMahon on one of those like massive uh, trolleys that you use to move like production stuff because Shane
Okay.
can't move and Kurt can't pick him up with his broken tailbone, and he's just pushing him down the ramp on one of these trolleys to get them back in the ring. Like,
I'm right in thinking that I actually, the more we talk about this, because I remember, I think it was Bruce Pritchard. I've listened to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, who he taught because he was involved at this time and he was talking about this. Wasn't Angle like he can't remember anything about this match or something at some point, can he?
I think so.
He literally can't remember the match.
Yeah, I think so, and it wouldn't surprise me because the match is as good as it is. You do watch it and you're wincing during it.
Question.
Yeah.
If he wasn't Shane McMahon, if he was somebody else,
Yeah.
Shane, do you think he would have? Because he's not a bad wrestler, really, is he, Shane?
He was better during this period. Like,
Yeah, because he actually, he worked really hard. Because he never really wanted to be an executive, did he? He wanted to be a wrestler.
yeah, I think so because he was a referee to begin with, wasn't he, back in like the early 90s?
Yeah, his dad was a referee as well for his dad in the early days as well.
Yep.
So, yeah, do you know what? I might go back and watch that match. Modern wrestling fans would be shocked at the, the insane amount of insane violence that you used to have during this era in wrestling.
Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah, just go and watch the match. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. It's not a bad match, but you will understand why Kurt Angle's body is so beat up because it's the epitome of like a violent Attitude Era match.
And and the fact that he finished, it's insane. The fact that they both finished the match and it wasn't
Right?
called off.
Yeah.
Back to the subject of later on with the invasion angle. Do you think that WWF made a mistake with turning Austin heel at this point?
Yes, because Austin was a WWE guy. All the people that would have turned on the alliance, him, The Rock, like Undertaker, are like the three that stand out that would never do it.
Well, considering what Bischoff did to him in WCW, if anyone knows that story, sacking him via FedEx,
yeah.
it's like the most unrealistic person. I'm in two minds about the invasion angle. I think parts of it were really, really good. You've obviously at this point you've got Angle with the milk truck.
Yep.
Probably one of the most famous instances in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a carbon copy of Austin with the beer truck,
Yep.
but even funnier because it's milk.
It's
I
milk.
think it's just hilarious. Watching Austin rolling around in milk in the ring. And you've obviously got some great matches, but again, they didn't know what they were doing with the invasion angle. And it stopped really suddenly at Survivor Series. And I think they then were flapping around for a good year. Like if you WWF pre Survivor pre invasion angle compared to WWF post invasion angle is a different company in my opinion.
Yeah, the invasion was too short, and they didn't build up any stars. Like, not one person.
Booker T to an extent, maybe Booker T got quite a. I think Booker T is probably the only one that came out of it looking great.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to build up Rhino, but didn't really work.
The
RVD,
gore in the hall.
yeah, like RVD came out of it looking really good, but then RVD is a wrestler that I don't think you could hold back even if you
Wasn't he
tried.
already with? It wasn't actually. Sorry to interrupt you. And I've got a habit of doing it, listeners. RVD had already been with WWE for a while, WWF for a while pre that, hadn't he? And so had the Dudley Boys.
The Dudleys
So
had RVD
when
had
it comes to
RVD
people
was
that
with ECW until the very end. The problem was that
he okay?
RVD. So the problem was RVD was under a written contract with ECW, but ECW weren't paying him because they couldn't afford to, so he just stopped going to shows.
Right. Okay, I
Yep.
understand. Okay, I did hear somewhere that he still owed like 300 grand by Paul Heyman, but's given up asking for
Yeah, he's never getting that
it.
money. Let's be fair.
Well, not unless the bloodline cuts him a check. I mean, The Rock can afford it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're drifting off to Invasion. I remember the end of the Invasion angle. Angle's the guy that betrays Austin, isn't he? Right at the
Yep.
end, that was quite a good thing because they had that whole thing where they had convinced Vince was trying to convince everybody that Austin was going to turn, but in the end it was Angle, if you remember,
Yep.
because Jericho and The Rock were having a really personal feud, and he couldn't get over his personal aminosity to The Rock, and he tried to screw WWF, but then Angle screwed WCW. I don't know.
The invasion
We
angle
might
is
need more than one episode on this.
yeah. The problem is the whole invasion angle is a whole thing in itself because it's just it was so badly done and it was so short that it's really hard to explain without like living through it just how bad it was, especially if you enjoyed ECW and WCW. Like it's very like the things they did to like DDP for example and people like that is just yeah blows my mind.
I think people don't remember that Invasion was only July to October, I believe.
Yeah, it's really short, really short.
Because I remember the original Invasion pay-per-view was in
Yes.
July, and then Survivor Series was in October. I thought it was longer than that. Oh, it's May to November, which is still quite short.
Yeah, I mean, there's been the Undertaker Batista feud
Yeah.
was like twice as long as that alone.
Yeah. And of course, another thing about the Invasion angle, that like this is what Bischoff said. They should have brought Eric Bischoff back for it, or had
Yeah,
Ric Flair lead it. They just like and this was the whole thing about WWF to an extent. I know we're going off the angle subject here a lot, guys, but McMahon, Vince had to put a member of his family involved in everything.
yep,
Like, because originally Paul Heyman was leading ECW, wasn't he? And then Stephanie had to take over. It was
yep.
just like, for God's sake, nepotism to the extreme. Right, Rhys, shall we get back onto Kurt Angle before
Before we
we
talk about the
spend
invasion.
44 hours talking about Invasion?
Yes.
Yes. Right, skipping it. Right, where were we? Right, Jesus. Right, what year are we in? 2001.
Yeah, the end of 2001.
Right. Uh, well, I mean, skipping past the invasion, he was involved in the. God, my brain's gone numb. The pay-per-view where Jericho defeated Rock and Austin the same night.
Unforgiven. No.
Unforgiven.
It's
No.
the December one, which I want. Vengeance. No.
Yeah. Uh, yes. 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 It's Vengeance.
There you go.
So Angle lost to Austin, who was the WWF champion, and Austin then lost to Jericho, who
Yep.
had become the world champion. Because at the time it was the world champion.
Yes,
Yes, I
he became the
remember that.
inaugural undisputed champion, wasn't it?
Yes. And there's a funny story that Jericho tells about that. That how it did. Have you heard the story about how he finds out that he's going to win it? Because it was going to be Kurt Angle, and something happened behind the scenes, and they decided to give it to Jericho a week before.
Yeah, I heard the story that Jericho found out the day of the show. Like Vince walked past him and made an off comment about like, oh, the company's dying when we're putting the belt on Jericho or something like that.
It was in catering,
Yeah,
and Vince sat at a table opposite Jericho with Undertaker, and he turned over and he went, "Taker, the company's going to shit when we give the world title to Jericho." Ha ha ha.
yeah,
That is, I can see him doing that as well.
yeah. So can I, honestly.
Just see him.
So can I. Isn't that a scary thought?
After losing in the tournament against Austin, He then goes on to feud with Triple H again, briefly, and then he feuds with Kane, defeating him at WrestleMania X8. Angle then reunited his feud with Edge, defeating him at Backlash. But during this point in time, bearing in mind Angle was still only late 20s, I believe, at this point in time, he was already naturally balding. WWF turned this into an amazing thing where he loses a hair versus hair match at Judgment Day, having his head shaved bald on the stage in front of everybody. And I think Edge was great at this point in time. Do you as well? I think this was probably... I know Edge later on went to become like an 11-time world champion and involved in everything, but he was just really... There was something really refreshing about young Edge. Would you agree?
No, I agree, because you had him doing this with Angle, which I really think was his like push up the card. Then he teamed with Hogan.
Yeah.
Then he became part of the SmackDown 6.
Yes, he won the title, but they won the world title, didn't they?
Yeah.
The WWE title. You know what I mean?
The tag titles, yeah. And then you had him in SmackDown 6, which is probably the best period of SmackDown ever. And then that
Paul
sort of
Heyman,
led,
isn't it?
yeah, and then that led into him going back to Raw, and eventually the Rated R Superstar. So I think this really was the start of Edge's like climb up the card, because it was only
Edge had his best team at this point,
yeah.
in my opinion.
Oh, the Rob Zombie one.
I really like Metallicus, but I really think Rob Zombie's one was the best theme he had, and I think he was told by Rob Zombie to stop using it, wasn't he, or something?
I think so.
I heard that Rob Zombie had a falling out with WWE or something, WWF, and he couldn't use it anymore. But right, so he never grew his hair back, did he? During his entire career, and he's stayed skinhead through his entire life since then. He's never even tried to, like, Cena actually grew his hair back, didn't he? But he didn't.
Yeah, he's been bald. He's obviously had a beard on and off, but yeah, just been bald the entire time.
You know what? I like him when he's got his stubble. I think it makes him look more menacing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Aggressive.
Yep.
So yeah, during this time, actually, mid 2002, John Cena made his debut.
Yes.
And I think, as debuts go, he looks ridiculous in those jobber trunks, but the whole ruthless aggression and slapping him in the face is amazing.
Yep.
So yeah, he's facing Cena. He lost to Angle after a roll up pin. But if you watch that match now, you can see all the hallmarks of Cena, his early career. Now, it's really weird. Like, to me, Cena doesn't... The Cena you have now and the Cena then are like two different people to me.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
There's a big change, because even when he first won the WWE title, he's still a little bit chain gangy and that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't quite place it, but there is this point in time where he just changes from gangster to teddy bear.
Yeah, I mean, you think about his early stuff. You had him getting stabbed in a nightclub by Carlito and all sorts.
Zeus. His name was Zeus. His Carlito's bodyguard.
Yes.
I remember that. Over the US title. God.
Those were the times.
He got stabbed in a thingy. He beat Big Show at WrestleMania by knocking him out with a chain behind the referee's back. He had really, really good... He had a parking lot brawl with Eddie Guerrero.
Yes.
Now that's something you don't see in WWE anymore. Parking lot brawl with Eddie Guerrero. He slapped Stephanie McMahon's arse in the ring. If you remember that.
Oh yes.
Oh wow. But this is not the John Cena episode. This is the Kurt Angle episode. Oh, I will say one thing about John Cena. I don't think there's been another wrestler that has made as much an impact for as long as John Cena did. Like, yes, Roman Reigns has been champion for 3 years now, but Cena held that spot for a decade, didn't he? A decade.
Yeah.
Like, and looking at Roman Reigns now, I actually wish Cena was back. At least he defended the title.
Yeah, at least he was there every week.
Super Cena defeating Great Khali and Manga. I think a lot of people lost their undefeated streaks to Cena.
Oh, for sure.
Cena's feud with Edge. Cena's feud with Batista. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting off. I'm being all what's the word? Dreamy about the old days, the ruthless aggression era. Right. So yeah, after this hair thing, he starts feuding with Benoit again, losing to him at Unforgiven. They were then teamed together to crown the first WWE Tag Team Champions. They won the tournament finals at No Mercy by defeating another amazing team, which was Edge and Rey Mysterio, thus making Angle the 5th original Grand Slam champion. The match between the 4 men at No Mercy was named Match of the Year by the Wrestling Observer newsletter, who don't often give it to WWE matches, if you've noticed.
Yeah.
They then made their first successful title defense by defeating another. Everything about this SmackDown era, in my opinion, was amazing. They defeated Las Guerreros, who used to do amazing skits. I don't know if you've ever seen their skits where they're riding around in their car.
Oh yes, Los Guerreros was so good at the time. Chavo is severely underrated.
So Angle then dropped the title to Edge and Mysterio at November the 7th in a 2 out of 3 falls match, and they then failed to recapture the title at a triple threat match with Las Guerreros, Edge and Mysterio at Survivor Series. Listen to that, yeah? SmackDown had tag teams in their main events during this era.
Yep.
But if you think about it, they're not the tag teams of nowadays. You've got Edge and Rey Mysterio, both of them multiple world champions. Angle and Benoit, both of them won multiple championships. Chavo and Eddie, both of them won multiple championships. Every single person there was a world champion one way or the other in WWE.
Yep.
That's crazy.
And
you
now
don't get that now.
The only two tag teams that
Sorry?
stand out to me as could main event a show would be the Usos, who aren't even together anymore, and the New Day,
who aren't really together anymore.
Yeah, maybe the Judgment Day, but it's not
They're
the same.
Stable.
Yeah.
The Judgment Day, in my opinion, the Judgment Day is all about Dominic and Rhea.
Yep.
And it's all now about R-Truth and that other guy, that other dwarf-looking fellow. I can never remember his name. The guy with the big head. He looks like the guy from Shrek.
Looks like a Funko Pop.
Yeah. Have you seen Shrek?
Yeah.
Look at that. That little guy. You know, the Lord. He looks exactly like him.
Lord Farquaad.
Lord Farquaad, whatever his Farquaad. Lord Farquaad.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only person who's picked that up. Right, anyway, back on. So we're now entering an era, which is one of my heroes of Kurt Angle, Team Angle.
Yes.
Team Angle, or the world's greatest tag team, was Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas.
Yep.
And Kurt Angle. At some point, they were managed by Paul Heyman as well. Now, Benjamin, in my opinion, is probably the best wrestler ever to be given a world title. I genuinely say, in terms of pure ability. What's your view?
Fully agree. I think these two were just phenomenal together. Charlie Haas, I think, severely underrated. Once he left the tag team, his career sort of just faltered. But I truly think him and Shelton Benjamin were amazing.
Have a run in. Do you know that Charlie Haas had quite a successful run in ROH after WWE?
Yeah.
Back when it actually meant something.
Yep.
So during this era, Angle won his 3rd WWE Championship, Armageddon, by defeating The Big Show, with the help of Brock Lesnar. So this is a really interesting time because Lesnar, or he who must not be pissed, named, is quite young at this point. Lesnar had Paul Heyman, who betrayed him for Big Show, who then betrayed Big Show for Angle, who then went back to Lesnar. So Paul Heyman's involved in everything at this point in time.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
It's funny you said that. I actually just watched that Big Show Brock Lesnar Survivor Series match where Heyman turns on him because I watched
Okay.
Survivor Series 2002 last night for the Elimination Chamber, and it's just such a good
Cool.
show. But yeah, Heyman is all over the place.
I'm going to ask you an honest question.
Okay.
Paul Heyman,
Yep.
do you think he will go down probably as one of the most, not managers or valets or promoters, overall, would you put Paul Heyman on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling for everything?
If we're including like everything, I think he has to be because
Because
there's not many wrestlers like a Steve Austin should be on a Mount Rushmore, but he's not exactly a business guy. His promos were good, but they weren't quite Heyman level, that sort of stuff. Whereas Heyman's done pretty much everything apart from
just
wrestle.
hey, well, he did actually have a match with CM Punk in a Hell in a Cell, if you do remember.
Tried to wipe that from memory, to be honest.
Yeah, the image of a walrus Heyman lying on the top of the cell with Punk hitting him with a kendo stick.
Yeah.
Heyman, yeah? ECW, okay? When ECW went down the pan, he managed, promoted, and basically mentored Lesnar.
Yep.
Okay? So when that stopped, he then became an executive, and he wasn't just an on-screen writer person. He actually became an executive and writer during the SmackDown 6 era. For a couple of years, he was doing that. He then went away for a while. He then rejoined, came back with Lesnar, became an executive again. Okay, that then stopped, and you got to say this whole thing with look what he's done for Roman Reigns' career.
Yeah.
You can't take away that because what was Roman Reigns before that really? Suffering succotash, couldn't spit a promo.
We don't talk about the
Now
dark
look at
days.
him.
Yeah.
I
He
mean,
has grown into his own.
have you noticed? Though, have you actually noticed subtly? Heyman has started to talk less and less and less, and Roman's started to take over now.
hmm I think it's about time Heyman
Because
leaves the bloodline, to be honest.
WWE, he wins his WWE Championship at Armageddon. Surprise, surprise. He then faces. Guess who he then faces next for the title at
It's going to be
Royal
Chris Benoit
Rumble?
at the Royal Rumble, and it's phenomenal.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal. Making him submit to an ankle lock.
Yep.
He then has probably his most famous match of all time against Lesnar at WrestleMania X1X. What is it? X1X? What's that in Roman numerals? 21?
19.
19, sorry.
Yeah.
My brain. Wrestled that match. Fucked. Do you know that? His body, he shouldn't have even wrestled.
Yeah, that
At
is
this point in time, he was so hurt.
that's a really weird WrestleMania because you've got the amazing Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels match where Jericho
Yeah,
punts him
where
in
he
the
kicked him in the
testicles.
nuts.
Yeah. You've
Yeah.
got The Rock and Austin in Austin's final ever match, which was okay. You know, could have been better. You had The Undertaker with Nathan Jones, if you remember, against Big Show and A Train, I think
Used
it
to
was.
remember.
Yep. You had
That's the
that.
one where originally it was supposed to be Nathan Jones's match, and all Nathan Jones does at the end is kick Big Show in the face or
Yep.
something, isn't it?
Yep. You also had Hogan and McMahon in that street fight, which is shockingly bad. It's
On for
20 minutes long.
21 minutes.
Yeah. But most famously,
I've got a feeling. Is this? Hang on 1 second, Reese. Is this the WrestleMania where it take Booker T gives Triple H a 25 count?
yes, that was going to be my next one. It's Booker T, who
Boy,
should have won the title, losing to Triple H.
he pedigrees him once, doesn't he? And then it takes him like 20 seconds to cover him.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
And then to round the show
Because he's
off,
blown, isn't he? He's totally blown.
yeah, he's fucked. And then to round the show off, Lesnar spikes himself into the mat and concusses himself and doesn't remember finishing the match.
Yeah. So you had Lesnar, who injures himself in the match with a concussion. Angle, who's freely admitted he couldn't feel his fingers in
Yep.
the match. He couldn't feel his fingers. And they still somehow managed to wrestle a match that everybody remembers. What I
Yeah.
remember about that match most is the image of Lesnar in mid-air,
Yep.
realizing he's too far away from Angle.
There's also the shot at the end of him holding up the title, and you can see he is
He's
in,
gone.
yeah, he's in La La Land.
Yeah, he's gone. I believe Angle actually disappears for TV for about 6 to 8 months after that. I'm just checking. Yeah, right. Angle underwent neck surgery to repair nerve and spinal damage, calcium buildup, bone spurs, and intervertebral disc problems.
Just a small amount of
Oh,
injuries.
so he's supposed to be out for a year, and he was only out for 3 months.
Yeah, Angle's a specimen.
Wow.
Angle's an absolute specimen.
I think today's WWE would not have let him come back so soon.
No chance. Absolutely no chance.
So he then comes back on the 5th of June and defeats Lesnar and Big Show in a triple threat match at Vengeance to win the WWE Championship for a fourth time. This is the time where they start to have the Lesnar Angle friendship,
Yeah.
which was quite. Some of them were quite funny. Some of the skits. There's the one where Angle's sitting in the back drinking milk, and Lesnar hits him on the back so hard that he sprays milk all over Lesnar, or
Mm.
something like that.
And then Lesnar like shoves in that
I
frame or
do
something.
remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the point in time where Vince McMahon had, for some reason, I think Vince just wanted to be involved in something, turned against Kurt Angle, and was trying to get him to drop the belt. But I mean, he defeated Lesnar in a steel cage match, and then he defeated Lesnar again at SummerSlam. I think Lesnar submitted for the first time in his career,
Hmm.
but then Lesnar beats him in a 60-man Iron Man match on SmackDown, which again, class.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think they've dropped a title on TV for years. Would you agree?
Yeah, nothing comes to
When was the
mind.
last time you had something like that on main? Sorry?
I said nothing comes to mind. The last big shock like that I remember is when Samoa Joe beat Balor for the NXT title on a house show. And that's all I remember. Other than that, I don't remember last time a world title changed hands on a main show. Oh no, it was AJ Styles beating Jinder Mahal on SmackDown in the UK
Yes.
because it was on.
That to me, in my opinion, was them scrambling to take the belt off Mahal because it wasn't working.
Yep, because that was a taped show as well, if you remember, so everyone knew it was going to happen.
Mm. So after dropping the belt to Lesnar, they have the old school Survivor Series, which was a five man Lesnar versus Angle match. And this is the Survivor Series where Shane gets his testicles electrocuted by Kane, I believe. Yep.
Oh yes.
And he pisses himself.
Oh man, what a match that is. The ambulance match, or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
you had Goldberg winning the world title. You had McMahon defeating The Undertaker in a buried alive match.
Yes.
Team Angle was Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, John Cena, and Hardcore Holly with JBL. Team Lesnar was Lesnar, The Big Show, Matt Morgan, Nathan James, and A Train. Angle's got a much better team there, hasn't he?
Yeah. What a. Oh, that's a horrible show. This also though did have
Uh,
probably one of the best Survivor Series matches, and it's Bischoff versus Austin.
I was about to come into that. Chris Jericho, Christian, Randy Orton, Scott Steiner, and Mark Henry, with Eric Bischoff, Stacey Keebler, Theodore Long, defeating Shawn Michaels, Rob Van Dam, Booker T, Bubba Ray Dudley, Devon Dudley, and Stone Cold. That's a good match.
That's the match where it comes down to Michaels versus, I want to say, Jericho, Christian, and Orton. And Michaels is putting in a lifetime performance, gets it down to a 1v1, and then Orton hits the RKO out of nowhere and wins it.
Oh,
It
yeah,
is,
people forget Orton. Orton was around in 2002, 2003. Jesus, he must, and he's still wrestling full time now when he's not
yep.
hurt.
Which probably explains why he's so hot so much, because he's been going at it at a top level for a while now.
Am I right in thinking that Orton he's got weird shoulders, hasn't he? He's got hyperplexy shoulders. That's why his shoulders look strange, don't they?
Yeah, because
Now,
he tells a story. He dislocates his shoulder loads of times doing that. Do you remember when he used to lay on the floor and like punch the ground to set up the
yes, he
RKO?
doesn't do that anymore.
No, it's because every time he'd do it, he'd pop his shoulder out and dislocate it. So
And
he
if you
stopped.
also notice, his RKOs have changed as well. They're
Yeah,
now double-handed
yep.
instead of one-handed. To give you a clue, yeah, back in WWE used to have buy rates of 500,000 per pay-per-view
At
when
a
they used
good
to have a pay-per-view system.
at 50
Yeah.
pounds a
Do you know
pop they
what?
were.
At 50, 60 pounds a pop, AEW can't get anywhere near that.
Yep.
Right. So, where were we? Okay. So, Angle then gets involved with a feud with Eddie Guerrero. Right. Again, I keep saying this, yeah? Great matches.
Hmm.
Okay. Absolutely amazing matches. This is around the time where Eddie Guerrero defeats Lesnar at No Way Out, which is one of my favorite ever matches because usually a wrestler like Eddie Guerrero versus a wrestler like Brock Lesnar, and I'm not talking about his Latino stuff, I'm talking about his size
Yep.
and everything, wouldn't look believable, would it?
No, not all.
That match looked believable, and that is one of the best promos I've ever seen. Is where Eddie speaks from the heart about his problems. You know which one I mean.
Yep.
Yeah. And even Lesnar looks taken aback about. He looks quite emotional at it because it's very. Like, there's that thing about Guerrero. I don't think Guerrero's promos were scripted at this point in time. I think he said what he wanted.
Yeah, for sure.
So Angle defeats John Cena and Big Show in a triple threat match to become the number one contender for Eddie Guerrero's title at WrestleMania 20. This is the This is the famous WrestleMania where Eddie Guerrero loosens his boot to win. I'm sure you
Hmm.
remember that.
Oh yes.
Which was actually Guerrero's actual idea because everybody is like they said Angle, you're not going to win. Eddie's going to go over at WrestleMania. Angle wasn't pleased about it. Apparently, he was really unhappy about it because he'd been promised a WrestleMania main event win. But when he found out what Eddie's idea was for it, he actually was really into it because it didn't make Angle look weak, did it? It tied into Eddie's light sheet steel.
Yep.
The only thing that's disappointing about that is that's where it stops. Eddie then goes and has the amazing thing with JBL when he basically makes JBL's career. He refreshes Bradshaw completely. That's a
Yes.
different story. This is the time period where Kurt Angle starts to become general manager, I believe, isn't it?
I think so because he has the feud with Big Show where he tranquilizes him.
He suffers from legitimate neck problems, goes for surgery. He's not scheduled to return for some time. He was then made on-screen general manager, with the absence from the ring, attributed to the Big Show choke slamming him 20 foot off the ledge, if you remember.
Yes, and the awful fake blood everywhere.
Yeah, and then Angle. This is where Angle starts to screw Eddie Guerrero out of the title constantly. I believe they never went anywhere with this in the end, but during this time period, he costs Eddie Guerrero the championship at the Great American Bash, and then he costs him the championship at SummerSlam, and then he costs him the championship at No Mercy. 3 times in a row, Eddie Guerrero was meant to beat JBL. If you remember with JBL, he's a bit like a bit like Roman Reigns, but much more entertaining. He never really won any. He never won any of his matches clean, did he?
No, the problem was he was up against really, really good like Eddie Guerrero. Like to me, what stands out is the bull rope match. I think it was where Eddie is just like
Yeah,
hissing blood everywhere. Like it's those
that
memories
happened
that
more
really
than
stand out.
once. That happened because he defeats JBL at Vengeance, I believe. JBL hits him so hard with a chair, he legitimately. Now, you can always tell the difference in wrestling between Blade and proper fucked. Vengeance, if you watch it, he legitimately does something. He pops a vein in Eddie's head, and there's actually blood squirting. You can see it on camera. There's blood squirting out of his head, and he
It's
finishes the
gross.
match.
Yeah, it's really gross.
Um, I remember JBL talking about it at the time. He didn't want to carry on. He was like saying to Eddie, and Ed's like, "No, no, come on!" Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
So back to Angle. There's a lot of things. Angle. He was really entertaining as general manager. It was actually really entertaining, much more entertaining than his later general manager uh, run. That might be to do with the way how WWE was scripted at this point in time. He was then fired by Vince McMahon in a really funny, sketch where McMahon, you know, pushing him out of the wheelchair and getting him to stand up and everything. At SummerSlam, Angle defeats Eddie Guerrero by submission. Angle fights Eddie Guerrero in a lumberjack match when it ends in a no contest when Big Show makes his return and attacks both Angle and Guerrero. This led to a match at No Mercy where Angle lost to Big Show. This was at the point in time where Big Show was heel one week and faced the next week, if you remember.
vaguely. Yeah, I was sort of on and off during this time period. But I vaguely remember that.
And moving on, one of the more famous instances in his career happened. So we're now ending 2004. Okay, this is where he has that unscripted segment on Tough Enough. Surely you've heard about that,
Oh, Daniel Puder, yes.
where Daniel Puder locks Angle into a legitimate Kimura lock with Puder on his back and Angle's arm locked in the Kimura. Angle pushed him to his shoulders, pinning him. Pinning him. One of the referees quickly counted three to end the match, despite the fact that Puder's shoulders weren't fully on the mat. Puder later claimed he would have snapped Angle's arm on national television if the match hadn't been ended. Dave Meltzer, Uncle Dave, in an interview said it was real. If you don't follow fighting, locked in a legitimate Kimura or key lock, as Taz called it, although Taz didn't let on the move was fully executed. Not only was Angle not getting out of that move, but most MMA fighters would have tapped already. Angle couldn't tap for obvious reasons. The ref counted to three even though Puder's shoulders weren't fully down, trying to end the thing, because the reality is Angle would have needed surgery if it had gone on for seconds more.
Yeah, I can tell you as someone that has done like martial arts in the past, a Kimura lock hurts like fuck, and it would have torn everything. Like they are so painful.
Apparently, backstage, Angle was livid. He was smashing things up, and they got Puder out of the arena within seconds.
Yeah, the best thing is about the story though is Bruce Pritchard says that they deliberately told Angle not to do something like this, to just keep to the script and let everything be. But apparently, Angle's ego got the better of him in the ring, which is why there was never really any like. There was obviously heat on Puder for going to business for himself, quote unquote. But
Wasn't Puder then absolutely destroyed at the Royal Rumble?
yes, they put him in the ring with Hardcore Holly, Benoit, and Guerrero, I think, who chopped the soul out of him.
I believe it. Hang on a second. I don't mean to. I think it was. It wasn't Guerrero. It was JBL.
The JBL.
JBL, Paul Holly, and Chris Benoit. Mate, would you want to step into the ring with those three if they're pissed off?
No,
Bearing in mind what JBL did to the Blue Meanie and what was that other team that he did that? What was the team the APA literally beat up for real on national television?
that would have been the Public Enemy from ECW.
Yeah, they didn't wrestle them. They kicked the shit out of them on live TV.
Yep, and then they quickly left and went to, I want to say, like WCW.
Yeah, they were out of that arena, weren't they? But both Ron Simmons and JBL were known for that. Although I've been made aware through podcasts that Ron Simmons is legitimately a fucking tough man you wouldn't want to fuck with.
Mhm.
But JBL got knocked out by Matt Striker or something. The commentator knocked him out. Sorry? Joey Styles knocked him legitimately out. Right, mate, we'll stop here for now because next is the Wrestling Machine, which is 2005.
And then we've got ECW, and that is a whole topic in itself, for sure.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, we've realised that Kurt Angle's career in WWE was more complex than we remembered. So we're going to put a stop at it here in 2004 because his later 2 years in WWE, 2005, 2006, covers quite a bit. You've got him winning the World Heavyweight Championship. You've got him in ECW. And you've obviously got his unceremonial leaving, which is a 10-minute conversation where he can't remember apparently leaving Vince McMahon threatening voicemails, and he can't remember threatening to kill Vince McMahon. So what we're going to do now, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to post this one on... Well, we're posting this one this Friday, obviously the 23rd.
Yep.
And that's it from me.
Yep, so if you have enjoyed, please drop the episode a like. Helps us amazingly. If you're new and not subscribed, but you'd like to, that'd also be amazing. And hopefully, we'll see you in part 2. Bye, guys.
Doodles!